Imagine a room filled with the brightest minds of a generation, PhDs from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, engineers who spoke the language of differential equations and quantum mechanics as fluently as you and I speak our native tongue. They were the architects of the future, the chosen few tasked with charting a path to the stars. In the center of this room, on a pedestal, sat a machine, a marvel of engineering, an inertial measurement unit, the heart and soul of a spacecraft destined for the moon. It was a symphony of gyroscopes, accelerometers, and processors, designed to navigate the black, silent void of space with absolute precision. Section. But the symphony was out of tune. A tiny error, a persistent, maddening, infinitesimal drift, a rounding error in the universe. For weeks, the brilliant minds had battled this ghost in their machine. They had rewritten thousands of lines of code. They had recalibrated every sensor. They had shielded it from every imaginable form of interference. And still, the drift remained. A flaw so small it was almost immeasurable, yet over the 250,000-mile journey to the moon, it would grow into a catastrophic failure, sending their priceless probe tumbling into oblivion. Millions of dollars were on the line. National prestige hung in the balance. The project was on the brink of cancellation. The experts were stumped. Now, imagine a man who entered this same room every night, long after the brilliant minds had gone home, defeated. He carried no slide rule, no advanced degree. He carried a bucket and a mop. This is the story of that man, the story of how a janitor, armed with nothing but observation and a unique way of seeing the world, solved a puzzle that had brought the giants of science to their knees. This is the story the textbooks forgot to write. To understand the weight of this moment, you must understand the world in which it happened. The year was 1966. America was not just in a race to space. It was in a cold war of ideology, a desperate battle for technological supremacy against the Soviet Union. Every launch, every successful orbit, every piece of data transmitted from the heavens was a victory on a global stage. The Soviets had launched Sputnik. They had put the first man in space. The pressure on NASA and its contractors, like the MIT Draper Laboratory, was immense, suffocating. Failure was not an option. It was a national humiliation. The probe in that lab was a critical precursor to the Apollo missions. It was designed to map the far side of the moon, to scout landing sites, to prove the navigation technology that would one day carry Armstrong and Aldrin. Its guidance system was the most advanced piece of technology on the planet. A sealed, inertially stable platform that could feel its own motion. It was supposed to be perfect. The problem was called gyroscopic precession. Think of a spinning top, a perfect top in a perfect vacuum on a perfectly frictionless surface would spin forever without wobbling. But in the real world, tiny imperfections, tiny external forces, cause it to wobble. That wobble is precession. In the spacecraft's guidance system, the gyroscopes were the spinning tops, and they were wobbling. Just a few arcseconds per hour. An arcsecond is 1/3600th of a degree. It's the width of a human hair seen from 60 feet away. A microscopic error. The team at MIT was attacking the problem with overwhelming intellectual force. They modeled the system on their mainframe computers. They wrote complex filtering algorithms to cancel out the noise. They theorized that subatomic particles, cosmic rays, were interfering with the delicate electronics. They reinforced the magnetic shielding. They blamed the software. They blamed the hardware. They blamed the very laws of physics. The project director, a man with a mind like a steel trap, was at his wit's end. He had assembled a dream team, and they were failing. The daily meetings were tense, filled with complex theories and zero solutions. The blackboards were covered in a spiderweb of equations so advanced that only a handful of people on Earth could truly understand them. And every night, after the frustration and the shouting, a man named Leo Martinez would come in to wipe those blackboards clean. Leo Martinez was born in 1925 in a small town in Arizona. His father was not an engineer. He was a watchmaker. From his father, Leo did not learn calculus or Fortran programming. He learned about gears and springs. He learned about balance wheels and escapements. He learned that the most complex machine is only as good as its simplest, most well-balanced part. His classroom was not a lecture hall at a prestigious university. It was his father's dusty workbench, littered with tiny tools, magnifying glasses, and the intricate guts of 100 different timepieces. While other boys were playing baseball, Leo was reassembling clockwork mechanisms, feeling the delicate interplay of force and friction with his fingertips. He developed a different kind of intelligence, not an abstract theoretical intelligence, a physical, intuitive, mechanical intelligence. He could see how things worked. He could feel when they were wrong. He never finished high school. Life got in the way. He worked odd jobs, eventually moving to Boston in the 1960s, seeking a better life. He took the job as a night janitor at MIT because it was steady and it paid the bills. But for Leo, the real payment was not on his check. It was access. Every night he had a front row seat to the future. He would clean the labs and he would look. He would empty the trash cans and he would read the crumpled up schematics and printouts. He wouldn't understand the complex math, not all of it, but he understood the drawings. He understood the shapes. He understood the machines. He became obsessed with the silent, beautiful machine in the center of the main lab. He watched the engineers during the day, saw the growing frustration on their faces. He listened to their conversations as he swept the hallways. Words like nonlinear drift, thermal coefficient, and stochastic noise filled the air. The problem seeped into his mind. It became his puzzle. He wasn't just a janitor in a lab. He was a silent observer, a ghost in the machine of progress, watching the best and brightest fail, day after day. The engineers saw the problem through their instruments. They saw it as data on a screen, a jagged line on a graph, a number that refused to go to zero. Their world was abstract, a world of signals and code. Leo saw the problem with his own senses. He was there, in the room, at 3 a.m. Silence. But it wasn't true silence. He could feel something, through the soles of his worn-out shoes. A hum. A low, deep, almost imperceptible vibration. He noticed it was intermittent. It would start, run for about 15 minutes, and then stop. Then, an hour later, it would start again. He started timing it. It was regular, predictable. He began to investigate. He followed the hum, night after night, through the labyrinthine corridors of the old building. He followed it down to the sub-basement. And there he found it. A massive air conditioning unit, the building's main HVAC system. It was an old, powerful machine, and when its main compressor kicked on, it sent a deep, low-frequency vibration through the entire concrete structure of the building. The engineers had shielded their experiment from every conceivable outside force, radio waves, magnetic fields, even seismic tremors, but they never thought to check the building's own heartbeat. To them, it was just background noise, easily filtered out by their sophisticated software. They had trained their instruments to ignore it. But the machine couldn't ignore it. The physical gyroscope, spinning at thousands of RPM, was a finely tuned instrument. The vibration from the HVAC unit was creating a harmonic resonance. It was like a trained opera singer shattering a wine glass with a single sustained note. The HVAC unit was singing a note that the gyroscope was uniquely tuned to hear. This resonance was introducing a tiny physical torque, a push, on the gyroscope's gimbal. This was the source of the drift. This was the ghost in the machine. It wasn't a software bug. It wasn't a flaw in the electronics. It was a simple, mechanical problem, a problem a watchmaker would understand. Leo knew he had the answer, but what could he do? He was the janitor. Who would listen to him? He could imagine the scene, walking up to the lead engineer, a man who advised presidents, and saying, "Sir, the problem is your air conditioner." He would be laughed out of the room, or worse, fired. So he waited. One night, after cleaning the lab, he stood before the main blackboard. It was covered in a frantic scrawl of elegant, complex, and utterly useless equations. He picked up a small piece of chalk. His heart was pounding. This was the biggest risk of his life. He didn't write a long explanation. He didn't try to explain harmonic resonance. He simply drew a clean, clear diagram of the gyroscope's housing. He drew a small arrow pointing to a specific, non-critical point on the metal casing. And next to the arrow, he wrote 3 simple words. Add 7.3 grams. Then he put down the chalk, picked up his bucket and mop, and walked out of the room, his shift over. He didn't know if he would have a job the next day. He went home and slept, for the first time in weeks, the sleep of a man who has solved his puzzle. But before continuing, I have to ask you, what do you think that was? An act of incredible bravery or profound, almost insane recklessness? To risk your livelihood on the belief that you, the janitor, were right and a room full of geniuses were wrong? Let me know what you think in the comments. I read them very carefully. And if you're finding this story of overlooked genius as fascinating as I do, please take a moment to hit the like button. It tells the algorithm that stories like this matter, and it helps the channel reach more people who need to hear them. Thank you. Now let's continue. The next morning, the lead engineer walked into the lab, coffee in hand, ready for another day of frustrating failure. He saw the writing on the blackboard. His first reaction was anger. Who had the audacity to deface their work? A joke? A prank by a student? He was about to erase it when he stopped. Add 7.3 grams. It was so specific, so absurdly simple. His team was working on solutions at the quantum level, and someone was suggesting they just stick a piece of metal on the side. It was ludicrous, but they had tried everything else. They were desperate. "What have we got to lose?" he muttered to his team. They laughed, but they did it. A technician, with a cynical smile, carefully measured out 7.3 grams of lead putty. He affixed it to the exact spot indicated in the chalk drawing. They sealed the test chamber. They spun up the gyroscope. They started the test run, and they watched the monitors. 1 hour passed. No drift. 2 hours. No drift. 6 hours. The line on the graph was perfectly, impossibly flat. The room fell silent. The laughter had long since died. The engineers stared at the screen, their minds struggling to comprehend what they were seeing. The ghost was gone. The solution wasn't in their billion-dollar computers or their complex algorithms. It was in a piece of chalk on a blackboard and a lump of lead the size of a thumbnail. The lead weight acted as a simple harmonic damper. It vibrated out of phase with the frequency coming from the HVAC unit, effectively canceling it out. It was an old, elegant principle of mechanical engineering, the kind of thing a watchmaker would intuitively understand. The lead engineer was a brilliant man, but more than that, he was a true scientist. He was not angry, he was humbled, and he was deeply, profoundly curious. "Find out who wrote this," he ordered. "I don't care how. Check security logs. Ask the guards. I want to talk to the person who wrote this on my board." It didn't take long. The night security guard knew Leo, knew he was always looking, always studying. The next evening, when Leo Martinez arrived for his shift, he was met not by his supervisor, but by the director of the entire laboratory. He was not fired. He was led into the main lab, where the entire engineering team was waiting for him. They stood in silence. Leo thought he was in trouble. He clutched the handle of his mop, his knuckles white. The lead engineer walked up to him, pointed at the gyroscope, and then at the flat line on the monitor. "How?" he asked. His voice was filled with genuine awe. "How did you know?" And so Leo, the janitor, in his work clothes, smelling faintly of cleaning fluid, explained. He didn't use complex terms. He talked about the hum. He talked about the feeling in the floor. He talked about his father's watches and how a small imbalance can ruin the most beautiful machine. The brilliant minds didn't laugh. They listened. They listened to a kind of wisdom they had not learned in their classrooms, the wisdom of the physical world. The next day, a black car with government plates pulled up to Leo's small apartment. A man in a suit from NASA was waiting for him. The MIT lab director had made a phone call. Leo Martinez was offered a job, not as a janitor, as a special consultant for mechanical diagnostics. He was hired by NASA the next day. His story was not published in newspapers. It was not a source of pride for the prestigious university that their janitor had to solve a problem their PhDs could not. It was quietly classified. Leo became a legend within the walls of NASA, but a ghost to the outside world. He was more than just the man who fixed the gyroscope. He was a reminder that genius has no uniform. Leo Martinez worked at NASA for the next 25 years. He never got a formal degree. He never published a paper. But his unique talent was invaluable. He was the man they called when the computer models didn't match reality. He would walk into a clean room, surrounded by billions of dollars of technology, and he would just listen. He would place his hand on a piece of equipment and feel. He solved a vibration issue on the Apollo lunar module by suggesting a simple rubber gasket, a part that cost less than $1. He identified a potential weakness in the joints of the space shuttle's robotic arm by noticing a faint, high-pitched whine during stress tests that the sensors had dismissed as noise. The astronauts, men with egos the size of rockets, respected him. They called him the watchmaker. They knew that his intuition had saved missions, and maybe even their lives. He was quiet, humble, and never sought credit. For him, the reward was the puzzle itself, the satisfaction of seeing the complex world, of finding the simple flaw, and of making it right. He was not a theoretical physicist. He was a master of the real. His story is not a condemnation of formal education. The MIT engineers were brilliant. Their work made the mission possible. But their very brilliance, their deep immersion in the abstract world of theory and data, created a blind spot. They had forgotten to listen to the machine itself. Leo's genius was not that he was smarter. It was that his perspective was different. He brought a lifetime of physical, tactile knowledge to a problem that everyone else was trying to solve with their minds alone. He proved that sometimes the most powerful tool in science is a fresh pair of eyes, or in his case, a fresh pair of ears, and a connection to the physical world. He retired in 1991, having played a small, secret, but vital role in some of humanity's greatest achievements. He returned to a quiet life, fixing clocks for his friends and neighbors. The grand puzzles of space replaced by the small, intricate puzzles on his workbench. His legacy is not a patent or a famous equation. His legacy is a question we should ask ourselves every single day. Who are we overlooking? Whose voice are we dismissing because they don't have the right credentials or the right title? How many solutions are locked away in the minds of the people who clean our offices, drive our buses, or serve our coffee? Today, when we look at the breathtaking images from the James Webb Telescope or watch a SpaceX rocket ascend into the heavens, we are seeing the product of immense intellectual effort. We are seeing the work of thousands of brilliant engineers and scientists. But we should also remember the invisible contributions, the simple, elegant solutions, the moments of insight that came not from a supercomputer, but from a quiet man who knew how to listen. Leo Martinez demonstrated that the problem is never just the technology. The problem is often the limits of our own perception. He showed us that true innovation requires diversity, not just of people, but of thought, of experience, of perspective. He is the patron saint of the unconventional thinker, the self-taught master, the overlooked genius. His story is a powerful reminder that knowledge isn't always found in a classroom. Sometimes it's found in a hallway, by a man with a bucket and a mop, who simply took the time to feel the floor beneath his feet. Leo Martinez, 1925 to 1998. The janitor who listened to the hum of the universe and taught the experts how to reach for the stars.